While we're still setting up, I'll go ahead and start with the intro. Good afternoon, everybody. To those of you who missed my keynote, I'm a consultant and analyst, and I'm also representing Israel in the International Committee for Artificial Intelligence. But enough about me. We want time to hear about the speakers. So, relating to health, we have sadly grown accustomed to the phrase health crisis all around us. Particularly shortage of experts in many fields, radiology being a prime example for that. It has come to a point in which we simply must have better value from health as an industry, greater access and improved outcomes. Relating to AI, it seems nearly impossible to remember a time where technology didn't play a major role in our lives. The question is, can we rely on computers to help fix the health crisis? Can we trust computers to detect a cancerous mole? Can we use a computer to discern benign cellular changes from malignancies? Will a robot be able to autonomously carry out an operation like in cool healing pods we see in the movies? Advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning are transforming our ability to analyze vast amounts of data and to predict outcomes in both biomedical research and healthcare delivery. It holds so much promise, yet it is not without challenges to ensure it's effective and reliable with a safe implementation. So with all that said, this bundled subject is how AI is transforming medical research and healthcare, not if or when, but how, since the revolution has already started. Panelists, all of you are already invested with a high interest in AI and healthcare and are working to change that landscape, each from your own unique perspective. Please introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about what you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tsvi. I'm the general manager of NEC Israel. NEC is a large multinational, and our main connection with the medical healthcare area is that we are the #2 provider in Japan and Asia Pacific of EHRs, which are essentially, for those not in the know, the databases that hospitals use. So we do not do diagnostics. We do not sell things that make people better. We sell the boring software that runs the infrastructure that the nurses use in the hospitals. And we're very interested in this area. That's why we established the center in Israel. That's why we're doing some deep learning research, etc. Because it's clear to us that the next generation of EHR will have to be integrated with these capabilities. And make no mistake, there will be nothing else. Startups will not, on a massive scale, and I'm being provocative here, succeed in selling to hospitals directly. You will have the university hospitals, which are always the examples they give, but to sell to the mass, you will need some companies like the equipment manufacturers or the EHR makers. Thank you.
Let's go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Koen and I work for London and Partners. We basically, on behalf of the Mayor of London, promote London, and it's my job in London to really bring the AI ecosystem together, convene the people, the universities, the businesses, and look at global opportunities for them, but also to work with global companies. It won't be a surprise to you that artificial intelligence is a huge focus and priority for governments in the UK and in London, and I'm sure here as well. And we've been working with a lot of really great Israeli startups coming to London in different fields. And of course, healthcare is very, very important for any kind of public sector organization because it really is important for all the people living in a city or in a country. And there's so much that we can do together. So you can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter if you want to follow me. I'm really trying to get to 1,000 followers on Twitter, so I'm just going to plug myself here. Yeah, looking forward to the panel and discussing a bit more about what's happening in the sector.
You should do a raffle with prizes. It might help your game followers.
Hi, everybody. My name is Liron, friend. I lead the developer relations at Nvidia Israel. For those of you who don't know Nvidia, Nvidia is the #1 platform for running AI solutions, both for training and inferencing for your production solutions. And my job is actually to work with developers, researchers, data scientists, to onboard them onto our platform, to teach them about our solutions. We have a lot of software that not everyone is aware that it helps to accelerate your development process and also your algorithms themselves. And basically, we want to complete the healthcare from startups to hospitals and enterprises doing healthcare, and try to boost these AI solutions in any way possible.
Hi, my name is Aviv Veidman, and I'm the CEO of Nucleai. Well, diagnostic is being made today, I would say, mainly by a physician that is a pathologist. He examines the human body, biopsies tissues under a microscope with his own bare eyes, almost the same way as his, I would say, ancestors done for the last 150 years ago. Essentially, he's looking at the human tissue, looking for abnormalities of cells, whether they are benign or malignant. And of course, AI, computer vision, could immensely help with those tasks. The problem is that there is a shortage of pathologists. In Israel alone, there are only 100 pathologists. That's a problem that's all around, all over, in the States, Far East, etc. There is a shortage of pathologists and much more biopsies. And pathologists can make mistakes, and whenever they make mistakes, bad things happen. So what we do in Nucleai, we developed software that are based on computer vision that really helps. It does not replace the pathologist, but augments him and make his work much more efficient, accurate, and accessible. We are in partnerships with Sheba Hospital and with other leading hospitals all around the world. And our system right now is in clinical tests in, I would say, clinical settings in different labs in Israel and US and Europe.
Great, thank you guys. So AI in healthcare is an organic match for innovations since there is great potential for impact. It touches all of our lives and it has changed not so much fundamentally in decades, like you just mentioned, Avi. However, at the same time, it is highly regulated and involves many ethical issues. Can innovation grow from regulation? How is ethics involved? Does explainability play a role here? What are the social legal implications, responsibilities in case of malpractice? Please elaborate on each of the topics as you see fit.
Okay, so you mentioned malpractice. Right now, and the numbers are growing, over 40% of radiologists in the United States get a malpractice suit. It's not going to improve. So obviously, tools for pathologists or radiologists are becoming essential, and they're not going away. At the same time, as you mentioned in the beginning of your question, our view is that the real problem for disruption in this area is that the healthcare industry is so segmented. You have one customer, yourself, but you are served by a multitude of organizations with different interests and in shifts if you happen to be in the hospital. That's asymmetrical. And frankly, I believe the disruption will come from the wellness industry forcing new things upon the medical industry. So as an EHR provider, we're monitoring both, and we're waiting for the moment where the health industry, the medicine, the hospitals, the clinics, will come asking for new things, which actually their customers forced upon them. And we believe that will happen. There's a recent book by Eric Topol, who's a very known public speaker and MD, advises the president, etc. And he wrote in that book that he's hoping that the customers, the consumers, us, will make the revolution. We will force the system to change.
Very interesting, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think, I mean, obviously ethics is such an important issue and regulation. At the end of the day, at the moment, I think there's this interesting idea that social kind of software engineers are social engineers, right? So, and unfortunately, as human beings, we all have innate biases in us, and the data is biased as well. I think the thing that I find quite interesting is if you could have a guess who's what kind of person's DNA was first sequenced. It was a white middle-aged male, and so there's a lot of history that we're dealing with here, and I think this is where regulation comes in. I think a lot of the times entrepreneurs and companies look at regulation as kind of hindrance, but if regulation is done in the right way, it really can be a beacon, and it can really foster innovation, especially if it levels the playing field, if it makes it easier for startups to kind of gain access to customers, to data. So if it makes the whole industry industry more competitive. Regulation can be really good. And on the other hand, also, if regulation kind of pushes companies to build projects that are good for everyone, that are good for the whole of society. And at the end of the day, I think healthcare it's a really specific kind of niche industry in that regard, where regulation is involved, because healthcare is so regulated already. If you're building a company, if you're building products, you're already kind of operating in a very regulated space. So kind of everyone who builds AI in healthcare companies and products can kind of be a world leader on how to work in a regulated environment, I think, which is great for the industry and can really set a beacon for everyone.
I think you mentioned in your beginning that healthcare is like a breeding ground for revolution, right? There's so much to do in healthcare. It's been the same for I don't even know how many years. I do think what's happening in healthcare is a revolution, not evolution. We have loads of data that we can use to bring AI solutions and change many, many fields, from pathology to radiology, to drug discovery, genetics. And I don't think regulation is a problem. I think it's just a way of inserting this big, massive change in slow dripples. And what we'll see is that AI will first be a workflow assistant, assisting these physicians, these radiologists, these pathologists, and helping them to get better results, more precise results, more personal results. And eventually, that will evolve into automation. I don't know if it'll be fully automated ever, but for sure we're going to see much more automated workflows within healthcare.
I'll refer to 2 points. One of them is regulation, and the other, it's related to that. It's the way that AI and people work together, because I think that's the first start of everything. First of all, regarding regulation, of course, this is one of the obstacles, right? You could take a look at it, and I would say on both aspects, I would say it slows you down, for sure, right? But if you understand, this is not, that's the feature of the system. It's not something which, it's not a bug of the system. That's the feature of the system. If you are doing healthcare, you should know how to handle regulation. There's the upside of regulation, because if your product becomes a standard of care, then just the regulation makes people use your product, right? So there are like different aspects of regulation. Of course, for a startup which is quite agile and has a certain, I would say, runway, it's like a burden. Other big companies could relate to that quite easily, but there are different aspects of regulation. That's, I would say, the first point. The second one is what really bothers us, even as a startup. We have the responsibility, because at the end of the day, for sure, I would say the first stages will be that the pathologist will work with our system. And we always ask ourselves, are we going to change his mind in different, I would say, aspects of his decision? And for sure, he's going to change his mind some of the time. But we think the benefits are going to be higher than that. So it's something that you need to, I would say, to take a look at, be responsible as a developer, as a company, because you really know what are the features of your system, and put it on the hands of pathologists that you believe that will be beneficial from that.
Great, thank you. So moving forward, I think it takes us to the next subject, which is also in succession to my talk earlier, and the differentiation between automation of current processes relative to disruption you've already mentioned. And I agree with it being a disruption and a revolution and not an evolution. There comes a point where prediction becomes so good it changes the rules of the game. So I'll be happy to hear about how you perceive the disruption, or better yet, are working to create it yourself. In addition, you can relate to how AI is integrated into the clinical workflow, as you just mentioned briefly, Avi. It is automation at first, but disruption second. So please go ahead, Tsvi.
That raises an important point that when people hear about automation and workflow optimization in the medical field, we all tend to think about the clinician like this house famous character making the diagnostic and saving the patient. Let me give you some statistics that we should all actually understand. Average meeting time in the US with a doctor is 12 minutes. Of those, the amount of time the doctor actually talks to you and looks at you on average is 2 minutes. The rest of the time, she is typing information on a screen. Doctors have become slaves to the workflow that exists right now. There is no simple solution, but if we can improve that, and there's many projects like that, even before we get to the diagnostics, even before we get to the house MD stuff, we can get some benefits. Well, let me give you one benefit. Wouldn't it be nice if less doctors commit suicide? Because that number goes up. How good do you think is a doctor about saving your life if he's likely...
Is that biased by Japan?
Sorry? No, I'm not talking about Japan. I'm talking about US.
I know.
It's very real. In Japan, the doctor is on such a high pedestal, I'm not sure if they feel the same pressure. But in the US, in the EU, the suicide rates are going up. The burnout rates are going up. If the doctors are so miserable, and we can make their lives happier or better, if they can feel more confident they will not get a malpractice suit because they have the pathologist system, that by itself will improve healthcare. We can point our fingers at them and say, you need to do better. They're not. If we don't make it better for them, they won't. Thank you.
Interesting. So my focus was on the health crisis from the patient's view, and basically what you're saying, it's a two-sided platform, two-sided issue.
It's mirrored by the crisis that doctors are having all the time. Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think, yeah, it really connects with something that we hear a lot. So I work with a lot of kind of healthcare companies and AI and healthcare companies that want to come to London, come to the UK, sell into the NHS. And so a lot of companies will say, if you use my workflow management system, or if you do this or that, or if you change this in your hospital, you can free up at least 15 minutes of every nurse's time. Well, every nurse already works 2 to 3 hours overtime. So it just takes, and then that 15 minutes will just be filled up straight away with other things. So I think just having, so the technology in the end is only a tool. I think we need to be thinking a little bit more creative and disruptive about really solving the issues that there are. And I think a lot of companies start with the technology and then go to like a practitioner or go to a hospital or go to a buyer, and actually you need to start with the buyer and the practitioner and understand a lot more about what is going on behind the scenes, because from looking out at the outside it's not always as clear. So I think one thing that we've done in London quite successfully is so we have this accelerator, which is called digitalhealth.london, which is an accelerator that goes for 12 months. So, and I think that's taking into account that, accelerators usually are 13 weeks. But in healthcare, everything takes so much longer. You need to talk to practitioners, you need to get patients on board, you need to build the technology, you need to find people who are kind of going to be your ambassadors within the healthcare system. And I think something even more disruptive that you might be quite interested in is this is only open for London-based companies, except if you're from Israel. So we have a collaboration with IBM in Israel here. So and I think at the moment there's 3 companies on the program. So if you're using AI in healthcare and you're interested in digital health, do let us know. So even governments are trying to disrupt kind of healthcare ourselves as well, because it's important.
So Nvidia is actually playing a pretty big role in disrupting the healthcare industry. What we're trying to do is actually give as many tools as possible to the developers, to the startups, to the data scientists, in order to accelerate their work. Healthcare is a very big business unit within Nvidia. There's a lot of subject expert matters within the healthcare unit in Nvidia, and they're working very, very closely with our data scientists to release software to the researchers, to the data scientists, so that when they're writing their solutions, when they're writing their algorithms, when they're training their algorithms on this massive amount of data, everything runs faster, everything runs smoother. We're working very, very closely with hospitals and educating AI. We want doctors, we want radiologists, we want nurses, we want hospital staff to understand the benefits of AI, what they can do with AI, so that when these startups come and when these data scientists come, they can work together and understand, first of all, the language and understand the concepts, so that when they do these implementations, the implementations will go smoother, will go faster. And again, it goes back to education, it goes back to the tools that we're releasing to the ecosystem and to these developers. And we really are trying to do whatever we can to get this ecosystem understanding these solutions so that we can really see these implementations go smoothly. I think the worst thing that can happen is for AI implementations to go wrong. And then, we'll get people scared. They don't want to implement it. They don't want to take the risks. We need this to work. We need this to work smoothly. So we need to take the entire healthcare ecosystem from the data scientists to the doctors, radiologists, nurses, and have everyone understanding what they can do and speak the same language.
I would like to refer to the points of automation versus discovery. So I think that in every digital transformation that is being done, the first, I would say, phase is automation. Just take whatever the person, the human being is doing, and make the computer do that faster, maybe more accurate. That's the perspective of Nucleai in pathology, but you could see it in other domains as well, right? Radiology, first we took the map and then we had ways, right? So the first, I would say, step is automation. And then when you have an information which is not atoms but bits, you could take a lot of that information, multimodality, and get better decisions. That's the second stage.
So you're basically talking about data fusion, right?
Yeah,
From different
I'm
sources.
talking about fusion. Let's take the pathology information. You could fuse that with other omics, like genomics, proteomics, clinical information, radiology, right? So currently, the physician does not do that. Is very siloed, very vertical, very modality-oriented. There are radiologists, there are pathologists. Computers could take all that information and create some, I would say, very substantial different processes. And I think what really interests me is the third stage, where the computer could find some patterns that human beings could not find. Think about pathology. What was the way that pathology was invented? It was developed and invented by someone has a certain disease. You've taken some part of his body under the microscope, and then you find those cells. But, human beings are quite limited. Maybe the algorithms will find other patterns. So, and we see it. We see it. This is part of the, I would say, the roadmap of Nucleai. I think that today, because of our algorithms, we are using supervised algorithms. Today, Nucleai pathologists train the computer pathology. I think that in about 3 to 5 years from now, computers will teach pathologists pathology, because they will find something which is quite different. And I think we'll see this pattern everywhere in healthcare, everywhere where biology meets computation.
So taking your point forward, it's interesting to highlight, do you think it will replace, or will it be some sort of organic coexistence, like the Go example, where the players being beaten by the computer actually said the experience made them a better player, because they have now seen moves and stuff that before they could only have as a hunch, and now the computer articulated what they should have done as experts in their field. So I was hoping you were going in that direction of... Tsvi, you want to add something about that?
Yes, I'm not sure about where Avi is going, but definitely in all the pathology and radiology software we have seen, and Israel is an amazing offering, really. Nucleai is amazing, and there's others. I'm continuously, made more enthusiastic by the stuff I see. But the number one problem is not how to discover new stuff. That's great, and that will happen. The problem is doctors are not created equal. We don't have enough doctors, and they're not all as good as the best one. So any way we can use AI to get the average or below average pathologist to a better level, that's already a disruption. Okay? There's been a recent research by Google showing that when you showed, it was ophthalmologists, I hope I'm even saying it right, ophthalmologists who are looking at the eyes. When you show them the recommendation of the system, they took just a little longer, but the good ones did not improve. I mean, they were as right as the system and they didn't change their minds. But the less good ones got better.
So a disruption on average, an interesting coin term.
Right, so I'll take whatever you've raised to me, Tsvi. So I think, again, one of those aspects of accessibility is very important. Because think about it, AI is taking a capability of a certain profession and just putting that in a box. Currently, we are very limited by the physical world, right? So a pathologist is in the lab, but what will happen if we take a pathologist and put it in different places all around? Then you could shift it. You could shift the pathology profession for the operation room, because pathologist is needed in the operation room as well. Take it another step. From the operation room, you could take the pathologist to the oncologist and other aspects of, I would say, the medical hospital. Take it further on to the customer. Now you could have accessibility to a pathologist for a second opinion from your own home. And just take, I would say, the word pathology and just replace it, but by other professions that are very, I would say, professionalized. And by using AI, you could share this information or this professionality all around. That now you have accessibility. The pathologist in, I would say, in the village will be like the best pathologist in MD Anderson. And I think this is one of the disruption that we will see later on.
That's amazing. That actually connects, I think, to the whole user experience revolution we've seen in the last 8 years or so. I think Walgreens coined the term really well with their 3 Ws of consumers expecting everything, whenever, whatever, and I'm not sure I remember the third one, but it basically goes into accessibility and the experience that people might have today in retail, for example. And you're saying that's what we should be expecting and should be demanding in health. That's great. So moving on to our last topic. One of the main challenges in health, and what is definitely a must, and it's better and more effective partnerships between and across public and private between and across public and private sectors, as well as health institutions and patients together. Tsvi, your thoughts?
Yes. So to send everyone with a thought, I don't think there will be better collaboration among the existing entities without some external massive pressure. Not because anyone doesn't want it, but I've been involved with the Prime Minister Committee for Health in AI in Health, and I know pretty much the major hospital managers and the HMOs, and Israel is actually more advanced than the US in that. It's the only thing that can really make a major collaboration open will be if the data will become the patients. Think about it. They take your blood tests, they take your pathology samples, they take your x-rays. That's your data. Now, yes, there is HIPAA compliance, which means they're not allowed to do all kinds of things with it. But you, if you make a decision, you should be allowed to do things with it. Imagine, as Avi was saying, that now I own the data and I can get a second opinion. I'm a white, male, middle-aged Ashkenazi Jew, which means I've become aware of my health. For the last week, I've become a cyborg. I put in my arm a commercial blood glucose level measurement that monitors it all the time. And in 1 week, because I like data and I like reading about it, I know more about it than most of the research paper on non-diabetics right now. Imagine I could have all my data like that and I could share it with people, taking the risk upon myself because it's my life, right? It's my health. Thank you.
Relationship of empowerment. Thank you, Tsvi.
Yes, I agree. I think at the end of the day, it's all about the patients, isn't it? And I think to come back to your point, I think, if at some point medical professionals will not be the people actually making the diagnosis almost, but they will be the human interface of the diagnosis, because I think patients are happy that not their doctor is making the diagnosis, but they want to hear it from a doctor, right? Because we all want that human-to-human interaction. And partnerships are incredibly important. We've got some great new. We have a new Secretary of State for Health in the UK, and he used to be the Minister for Digital. So he's bringing like all of his ideas into it. So he's setting up. He just set up NHSX. I think Google X might sue him for copyright, maybe, but NHSX. So this is going to be a new organization that's going to work with interesting technology companies to bring technology in, and I'm sure we'll see lots of partnerships there. We're running out of time.
So first of all, the 3 W's is whatever, wherever, whenever. And I think it's very relevant here. I think that in order to succeed, we need partnerships. Okay? Partnerships means working together and breaking walls that exist in a lot of enterprises that we see today. We need the hospitals collaborating with startups. We need the doctors collaborating with their patients. If you take a look at the retail revolution, look what Amazon is doing. Look what we're asking. We're asking for everything that we want right here, right now. We go online, we buy it. In Amazon in the US, they deliver stuff within 2-3 hours. At the same concept, we want the same thing in healthcare. We want to take a blood test, we want the recommendation, right? So we need to take that into the doctor's office. And we need the doctors understanding that they need to change the way that they do things. We need the hospitals understanding that they need the startups because they don't have the data scientists within the hospitals. We need everyone collaborating. One of the things that Nvidia does, by the way, we have an Inception program, a program for startups. Nucleai is one of our Inception partners. And what we like doing is taking these Inception partners, introducing them into the hospitals, training the hospitals that they need AI solutions, and doing these partnerships. And what we see actually happening is that our Inception partners are getting into the hospitals, they're doing POCs, the doctors are getting used to working with AI solutions, and only through these partnerships we'll be able to make a difference.
So on the stage we have a red sign that says that time is up. Yeah, so thank you. But in 1 second, I would say that regarding partnership, the most important stuff is to understand what's your strengths. That means that Nucleai will not be NEC, who could not distribute to many places, and Shiba, that we have partnerships with, will not be Nucleai. And by that, we could work together, I would say, closely. Everyone knows to do or to understand which part of it is the strengthened one, and to act by this.
Last sentence, David, before we go off. Thank you, everybody. I think it was a great mix of enterprise meeting startups, meeting enablers all across the market, and cities, of course. Thank you for coming from London. Thank you. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you, everyone. That was very nice.